Thank you, Lisa. Can everyone hear me? Because I cannot hear myself well. I had a pretty bad cold last week, and this half of my body is not hearing what's coming out of this half. So if I'm not speaking clearly or loudly, do the Carol Burnett thing in the back of the room, and I'll try to respond in kind. My mission for this afternoon, and it's kind of a challenging one after lunch because you all had mashed potatoes and chicken, and pretty soon you're going to be crashing from the sugar in your cheesecake. So I'll try to keep it moving and engaging for the next 40 minutes. But although we have a lot of different vendors available for your access today, and you've heard some great concepts this morning, I'm one of those vendors tend to talk about the strategic goals and missions of big data and what this is going to mean to the next generation of IT personnel. And I tend to be one of the more tactical, practical guys that says, okay, we finally got the business guy to sign the PO. The PM is already at my door asking if it's done yet. And they just installed the software yesterday. How do you move from that strategy to making things happen? And so methodologies in mature organizations are typically that, the way we're going to go from X to Y to Z. And in a forum like this, I have an opportunity, as I was talking with one of my colleagues this morning, to be a little bit provocative and, as our keynote speaker said this morning, well, what else could we do? Is there another way to think about this rather than the typical IBM-based methodology? And that's what I hope to accomplish today. Let's get a few matters of business over. Just like in the academy, there has to be a selfie, so this is the most I'm willing to disclose at this point. This is me doing home improvements, actually trying to get a squirrel out of my attic. But that's a whole other story. We're not going to talk about that this afternoon. So that's really me. And I've been doing this BI thing for about 20 years in our space. Among the clients I've had the privilege to work with, it's a pretty broad mix of industries and needs. Advertising and marketing, military government, manufacturing, automotive, media, entertainment, environmental, and healthcare. So at WIT, we get our hands into a lot of different pies over the course of time. The challenge of doing all this, and I see many of these same clients I've served in the room or the building today, we execute NDAs with all of them. So if you're here to see a screenshot demonstration of what we built and how they're using that, that's not what I'm here to show you. I'm sure if you want to call us up, Kyan or Scott will have us drop by and build a POC in your neighborhood with your data, but that's not the point of what I'm talking about today. I do want to let you know that the recommendations that I'm making come from going through this cycle for a lot of different people with a lot of different needs and challenges. And so I want to try to consolidate for you what I am recognizing as some common expectations about this emerging science that I see called visual project development. It's not the same as the BI of old. It's not business objects, it's not Cognos, even though those firms may be remarketing and trying to sell themselves. Developing with emerging visual technology in the BI space is different. So I first came up with this acronym for ATI, which I tried last year to sell to QlikView, but no checks were forthcoming. ATI is what I call the access to insight interval. No matter who I speak with, their evaluation of your project success is how long does it take me to go from software installed, server turned on, to there's a dashboard in my face and I understand it's something that I didn't have yesterday. That's what I call the ATI interval. I think if you recognize, I see a few heads nodding, you have similar appetites. There's equipped to that is an expectation of rapid solution delivery. What does that mean, solution delivery? And I I kind of smiled at the acronym I heard this morning of, high failure rate environment. We say that in our own geek speak, but in truth, how many of us are really willing to allow failure to occur? Bless your heart. Because most organizations speak about it, but in fact, they'll call me and say, hey, that thing that failed last year, could we talk about how to resurrect that? No, leave it dead. I loved hearing that this morning. It failed for a reason. If you truly believe, we're going to belief systems delivery, right? But if you trust that high failure rate thing, when you're looking for solution delivery, will you allow things to move differently? We want data reusability. We want our customers we expect, or those customers do, expect a richer interaction than they had before, and everyone expects access to everything, everywhere. How did this make its way into the business place? It did so not by executive leaders, but by their grandchildren. Why? Because here's my iPad, make this work, right? I went to some show, how come I can do this on my phone? The executive may have not understood it in the workplace, but their children, their families have brought them ubiquitous access to information right on every device. So now you have a child stroller at the age of 2 with an iPad attachment. Really? The bouncy chair has an iPad attachment to it. What do you think that child will expect when he or she matures? And yet this is already in our space. So what are some of the critical success factors in our visual project development? First is, yes, continue to expect the ATI component, but watch out. We have people judging based on the technology itself, and often, how many are IT people in the room? Let me see a show of hands. And how many of you would consider yourself business team people, okay? About a 2 to 1. Right? And oftentimes the business team comes and says, I got off a plane, I read about this tech, we heard this in another talk this morning, make this work, give me some Hadoop, sprinkle some Hadoop. We don't know what that means. They don't know what that means. IT just read about the same magazine and we're supposed to install it tomorrow. But if that's the only tool you have, if that's the only hammer you have, everybody says, hit it with, here's another nail. I have this problem that died last year, but it's a nail, so hit it with the new hammer I bought. And we don't often know how to process the type of visual projects coming our way to discern, is this the right tech to apply to the solutions that are being thrown at us? There's also an issue about resource allocation. May I see the business people? I saw more of them over here, so I'm going to this side. There's a lot of self-denial about the appropriate resource allocation and what I call role recalibration with the tech we're talking about. Do you have the right people in the right job? And are you brave enough to answer the question in the first place? Are you willing to do something about it when you detect it? Because not everyone who has been in your organization doing, I'm good, not everyone working with COBOL, or I had someone say, well, I've been using Access for the last 20 years, so I can learn this. Really? That long with, you're still in Access? Can we talk? Not everyone will be able to adapt to a visual way of thinking. Some things do last, though, and I will stand on this soapbox. I had a pastor at a church teach me this lesson. And the way he expressed it was, there's always time for the money. When it comes time to holding babies, talking to people and whatever, those not-for-profits have to raise money, and they know that they'll make time for many things. There's always time to talk to that special donor, that special benefactor. You know what? In IT, there's always time for the data model. And if you don't build this into your plans, if you're not paying attention to this in your visual processes, you are shooting yourself in the foot. We talk about agile methods. Are we really agile? We want solutions, we say it's going to iterate, it's going to fail quickly. If your agile project It's 6 months in the making. I challenge you, are you agile? If that's 6 months for your POC and you're finally going to bring that to production, and the net time from the time the concept started to your delivery is 2 years, are you agile? And if you're trying to build that as an enterprise solution and it took you 2 years to get there, why do you think that 2 years from this date, that application will still be relevant? We have to think differently. And visualization, we saw in a couple of examples, and Kelly Services folks earlier had an excellent couple of charts, and is it Peggy or Rebecca here also in her QlikView thing, a great example of here's a strip of numbers, but what does the line mean? Visually, we get that. So I want to talk about our methodology for visual development. And this 3-stage process, I learned to apply from a best practices paper that QlikView had authored about how you build QlikView applications themselves. And they recommend that you slice them into 3 bites: load, transform, and view. And I'm proposing that as a broader methodology, we consider our cycle of methodology development in just these 3 stages. I'm daring to challenge and throw away analyze, design, build, test, deploy. I dare to challenge our mature enterprises who have stacks of methodology binders built around analyze, design, build, test, deploy. And if it takes us 6 months, 2 years to get through all 5 stages, by God, we're going to fill out the form and do those steps. For the next 40 minutes or so, please allow me to suggest a different way of thinking about it. In deference to our keynote speaker, consider something else we might do. We all have legacy apps, the sacred data warehouse. There's some spread marks in somebody's desk drawers, favorite spreadsheets that are sacred. And now there's emerging Hadoop, and we all have the appetite. We've heard it all day long. We got to connect this stuff. We need a common vision to bring that together. That's what the load cycle is about, establishing connectivity and access. Transformation, the IT guys, the programmers and the guys who write HTML and JavaScript, this is our last best hope of career. Because I see the Tableau sales guy in the middle of the room, and they build great products that take all of that complex stuff that used to be the reason why you bribed your IT guy to get something done for you. And now the ease of use is so beautifully delivered in these new tools that someone else can deliver that. And I actually, and this is a quote, I had a customer come up to me, not a customer, but an IT person within a customer organization, and say, if this product can actually do all of those things, what will the rest of us do? A little bit of role recalibration. That was a direct quote, but there's recognition from the technical team that, hey, these visual tools have actually delivered on the promise. That it used to take, a great scientist to do X, Y, and Z in transformation. Well, now not so much. And this is an iterative cycle in this view layer. This is where ATI occurs. All the rest of this is IT folks. And the technology and the marketplace is compressing those complexities into the size of a pill that you can take, and now you're getting at that insight. Are we prepared to work, think, test? So I want to talk about the load stage of this, and I'm going to throw out some truths and some provocative thoughts. This stage is about connectivity to authentic sources. It's about connecting and getting access. But please avoid copy. It's not about possession. It is not a custody battle. In reality, I won't ask for a show of hands. You'll just nod your head if you know this. Have there been custody battles in your organizations about getting access to data? Because this is my silo, keep your peanut butter out of my chocolate, right? And the project managers will come and they write a task that says, connect to the system and download the data. And that's all they expect you need time for if you're the IT guy. And they come up to the IT guy and they ask him, well, how long is it going to take you to connect to that and download a file? I say, 3-4 hours. And then they're back at you guys saying, is it done yet? It never was about technically how long does this take. It's about politically how long does this take. Is that politic in your project plan? No, because we're agile. Baloney. Plan in truth for the load, plan for that process of working with human beings to talk about what your project is and how there's synergies between your needs and theirs, and who else should we be talking with to make sure they understand that I'm just reading, I don't need to buy 5 petabytes of drive storage because I'm going to make a copy of your database. It's not possession. It's not copying the Atlantic into the Pacific just because you want a glass of water. But that's often where we get distracted and it impedes our progress. The load phase also has to be more intelligently choosing what needs to be loaded. And here the technologies are no longer, it used to be complex to say, I don't know, that's going to be 20,000, 40,000 rows. I know, that's 3 million if you want to go there. And the technology guys will tell you, no big deal. NVD, no big deal. I can handle 5 million, 6 million, 20 million. So are you thinking about, though, what you need, load, transform, view, what you need in that final visual stage? And do you truly need a table with 100 columns? Which ones are you actually putting on the screen in the dashboard you're building? So think lean. Take just what you need for the trip and don't take anything else. It is no longer a problem to be deep, but it's not necessary to be wide. All right? That's a different way for those same data modelers that bless you, we gotta have you, but you should be thinking about the depth of all the history and the things you want to see, but not, well, I may care about the button color on the shirt that he wore on the day that he did the presentation. No. You care about the critical facts and the keys. Always make time for the data model. This will save you. Do logical data models and talk your customer through problem solving. My formula is this. Do you have all the components, all the elements you need for that formula? If you do, good. If you don't, well, but I may need that. Well, how often do you need that? How often do you use that? And what's the scope of this project? And what's the scope of this targeted deliverable? I need it, I don't need it. This saved us in a hospital application that I did with Beaumont in connecting to one of the large EMRs, Epic Systems you may have heard about. And I went to one presentation for a vendor who wanted to charge $250,000 to deliver their application. And, oh, by the way, 6 months of high-priced consultant hours to just deploy and test. And the software is $250,000, plus here's another 20,000 annual maintenance. We built the surgical application in a total of 6 months. And it delivered 8 years of surgical cases, down to the room and the material components used in the surgery. You could go from 3 hospitals down to the operating room. And I didn't need all of the whole EMR because of the capabilities that are there. But you focus on the value add of your deliverables. Your choice, the test barometer of whether or not an attribute needs to participate in your data model should be these. Itemize it. If you say you have to have it, how much of it do you need? When do you expect to see value from it? Did you measure the value? Did it deliver? If not, take it out of the model, think lean, and move on. But if you are caught in the trap of, well, I may need to know every medication that the patient that was delivered before the surgery for this diagnosis, you won't get that off the table. You've got to focus on the scope and the mission and the value add that's to come from. The transformation stage is where project planners should be putting the bulk of their time allocation for the project. It is not difficult, it is not complex to load deep rows, even what I just described before. That's not technically tough at all. The transformation stage is where we do these kinds of things. It used to be programmatic geek space, where you have to have a key to the computer room to know how to do these things. Not necessary anymore. Many of the best tools take this over for you. But sometimes, particularly where there are custom calculations, the secret spreadsheet on somebody's desk. Again, politically, it may take you longer to negotiate the confession of the business rule than it takes you to actually implement it in the technology. Plan for that. Don't beat up on your IT guy about saying, is it done yet? No, you haven't set up the meeting with Mary Jo and it's her secret spreadsheet. You gotta find out the truthiness about what your data is telling you. Also in the transform, here's a challenge I want to put out for you. You have old tech and new tech coming together and working side by side in the most mature organizations. ETL processes, EDI processes. And then you have new tech tools that can do the collection formula calculation. QlikView has such a rich scripted language for problem solving, and it bends your mind with the way it does set analysis. I'm sorry, the Swedes are weird, but it works. But oftentimes we can impede our own progress in implementing these tools when we insist that, well, you know, I've got 5, 10, 20 ETL people, I gotta keep them working, doing something. So we'll take this part of the project and we'll put that in that tool. And then they'll hand it off and we'll dump it into a text file. And then we'll read it into this database because I've got 6 DBAs. And do you dare to let the new tech actually do what new tech is capable of? Or at least try. Take a bigger slice of that pie and force the guys to prove their promise. Let that be one of the measures of your success, to say, you know, for my pilot, it's not only important that I have a pretty presentation, but is your presentation pretty sustainable? How many chipmunks are running around behind the scenes to feed the numbers on your presentation? What is that costing you? And how else might you allocate that money? That's a harder question for us to ask. But insisting on applying old resources and large infrastructure behind those projects can delay our agility and actually impede our effectiveness in solution delivery sometimes. For maximum procedural and processing efficiency, dare to challenge proof of this promise. Some vendors, and I made some notes in our pre-advertising about this, and I would be candid about, I've had the fortunate opportunity to work with both QlikView and Tableau in this space, and they're both leading contenders in that Gartner upper quadrant. They're fighting it out over who's going to be, so Dave, you win this one, hats off to them. But they're wonderful products, but it does require a different way of thinking to apply them. Not all of your current staff will get what they do. Some of them have some better strengths, and I will give it to QlikView on the power of designing that data model and locking it in so that you can race away with data discovery at the view layer, at the visual level. Where Tableau will perform best if you supply it with personnel behind the scenes who know how to serve and optimize the data before Tableau reads it in, particularly where you have joins and relationships. The associative model of QlikView has some definite pluses in my personal view so far. It's still a neck and neck race, but depending on your solution, there are some reasons where that may be preferential. Something else about this transformation stage is that you need to transform not only the data, but your project plans, project managers, I'm talking to you once again, also need to include time for transforming the human capital. This is more than just a training video on a vendor site. Tableau has excellent 20-minute YouTube type instructions to learn how to build and accumulate technical skills. Best in industry that I've seen. but it's more than a 3-day training class like the one I went to in Chicago with QlikView to learn the design capabilities, and another 3 days on the server capabilities, and another 3 days on the data management. But the process of human transformation takes more patience, more repetition, and more enterprise commitment to elevate the level of thought and instruction so that you have, and you do have an evolution of skills and awareness from those who built the confidence and the stability on the legacy tech that we applied, those who recognize some of the mind-bending opportunities in front of us with the new tech that's emerging and evolving. You don't want those groups warring from each other. You want them feeding one another. And you want to be able to take the richness of experience and expertise in your specific industry, in your organization, and have that complemented by a new way of thinking. And sometimes organizations let this stuff happen, expect this to happen accidentally, until it creates conflict between the human layers unnecessarily. Why not plan that into the transformation of your project and delivery? I'm racing to get to this stage because I really want to pay homage to Dan Rowe, the author of one of my favorite books called The Back of the Napkin. And now he has an extended edition. And so this is one and only place where I'm going to put in a subliminal plug. Get this book. Okay? Get this book first because it's a small, short read. I know you don't have time for a lot of book reading and consumption. But it is so thoughtfully and effectively written and quickly digestible, but brilliant insights that teach how we look at the world and see information and how our brains think. How many of you have ever been involved in a dashboard project that I would label an executive busy box? Yeah. We bought this tech, so make it work. We need more blinking lights. It needs to have more gauges. More color, more color. Was that the whole purpose of us being agile? Do we understand how information is consumed and reacted? But you're all laughing because you know I'm not lying. These things become projects without purpose, without reason. But there is a way that our minds consume information and reason, and Rome's work is essential to help us appreciate how to look, how to see, and he's codified this into a neat little, the whole value of the book is available. It used to be on page 147 in my first edition. Now it's 267, but I think I also learned last night the page number moves around if your iPad is this way or that way. So you'll have to buy the book and then decide what page it's on. But it's called The Squid. Okay? And if you learn the principles of the squid, I'm going to show you what that is here this afternoon. It will turn light bulbs on in your mind about how to use what he calls the 6 W's to answer questions visually and effectively. How do you decide when you should have a pie chart and when you should have a bar chart and when you need a line chart and who needs a word map and whatever? He talks about the scientific principles that affect the brain in the way we do this stuff. First off, in your organization, the look-see. Oftentimes we look at stuff and we don't know what we're seeing. He has a great little example here about walking your dog in the park. And it takes all of 2 minutes to read the little paragraph, but all of a sudden you appreciate how we consume information from just the visual presence in a site. Can you imagine? I spend so much time with customers in that executive busy box room, and you listen to all the chatter, discussion about what you should be putting on the screen in front of them, and I always answer them with 2 questions. So what? Then what? So imagine, what would happen if you actually had or could access all these different systems you're talking about? Let's just accept as a baseline that that's possible. We're going to do that. So I can get you all the data that you want. Then what? Then how would seeing that change your behavior? And if seeing that won't change your behavior, you are wasting time. you have what I call a measure for our own amazement, right? That's what the busy boxes make us sick about. It's a measure for, you've spent all that time and energy building a measure for your own amazement. It hasn't taught you anything. So if you use those questions, so what and then what, and you let those drive your visual triage, you'll get to meaningful, effective visual measurements. That's what takes you to the show. Look, see, imagine, and show. This isn't, I'm so glad that Rome verbalized this for me, because I've experienced it, and he just so concisely packages what's going on here. He has a concept of, this is not a makeup commercial. It's 4 rules of looking better. Right? What are these rules? Number 1, collect everything you can. Number 2, lay it out in front of you. Lay it all out in front of you. Forget what you got. Number 3, establish fundamental coordinates. How do you connect and associate this? And number 4, then practice the art of visual triage. Throw the noise away and stick with what's left. Why does this affect what we do with visual project management? Think about how it affects our data modeling. You now have the capability to connect all the data sources you need or want. That's not a problem anymore. That used to be a technical obstacle. It's not an issue anymore. Now you can lay it out all in front of you. Kudos to QlikView on this, because this is where QlikView's associative model drives us to establish fundamental coordinates between. It says, these terms are the same. I'm going to associate them. You can get here from anywhere, not a problem. Now, DBAs used to spend months denormalizing in 3rd normal form, 4th, 5th, normalizing data models. But this breaks that law for how we learn to do relational database models. Once you know your fundamental coordinates about how to navigate through, you have access to insight. So finally, the last step is, what would you want to see? Build your chart. Does it matter? Throw it away if it doesn't. Do you need it? Keep it. And deliver that to your customer. That's the insight that I heard this morning in the Kelly presentation that I saw where they, we thought these people weren't old. I didn't know this was happening over here. That's what these tools and products in the QlikView presentation, not just what is associated, but what got left out. And shouldn't I have seen this in Milwaukee? But it's not there. So learning those rules of looking better are important. 4 ways of visual looking. Orientation, where am I? Position, where am I relative to others around me? Identification, what is it? And 4th, where is it going? Trends, okay? Every chart that you build should be providing answers to these fundamental expectations of the human mind. And if you haven't delivered that, there's some reason why word clouds are very attractive in the New York Times, but they're not very specific, okay? So understanding these things helps you design and choose the rich visual library that's available when you design visual presentations. This is the Holy Grail. This is the squid. It recognizes that those 6 questions, who or what, how much, where, when, how, and why, each correlate to a specific visual rendering that makes sense. And so, if you're following the path of solutioning with your customers, and you learn how to overlay those visuals with the questions that are being asked, Rome has laid out a 2-tier mapping structure. And I know there's a test on this for you in the back of the room about what you here. But go to page 267 and spend some time staring at that page, and you'll find he's given you this visual mnemonic about how to find and select and choose the right type of visual rendering for the specific type of question you are being challenged to visualize. I point this out, I bring this to this room of folks, because most of us are IT geeks, and we learn how to write words without vowels. And we hate typing anything that's longer than 3 characters. How do we come to a point of visual service delivery to our end customer that is worth our time and adds value to their business. Because we're really passionate about the stuff we care about. And we don't understand why they don't see it right there when we gave them the reward. But they don't see because they don't know what they're looking at. So by understanding how people look and what they see when they do, what the key questions are to ask, and what type of visual rendering fits the problem, you have a much higher rate of success. Now, teaching the craft of this visualization, I told Amanda, she kept asking me, as a good project manager, are your slides done yet? I told her, Amanda, this is a whole other day's topic I could talk about how you actually put this in practice. And maybe we'll do that at another future workshop sometime. But I do feel passionately about guiding you to this resource and having you as visual designers and developers implement this as part of your thought process. So in summary, I want us to take us back to this load transform view. I'm kicking to the curb the analyze, design, build, test, deploy. You don't have time for that. You can go from here to here. Do you believe that you could go there in 2 weeks instead of 6 months? You should expect to do that. At least if you want to be in a high failure rate environment, only allow yourself 2 weeks to do that POC and prove its value. And if it takes longer, that's telling you something. Let it fail. It took too long. Adjust your scope, recalibrate, and do it again. And put this in front of your customer and make them work with it and let them get back to you with the measures of value that prove that it should be sustained, that it should be operationalized, or let it go. Technical capabilities, let your team get their hands in the sausage. Before you make promises and commitments of what you can do, understand what the technology can and cannot do. I'm sorry, I've touched too many projects where people looked at the technology and they thought it was the Messiah. They didn't plan certain parts of it. If I just touch that, it'll be healed. Whatever problem I haven't thought through, it'll fix it. We'll just give it to it. We'll just give it to them. They'll fix it. No. Don't take a messianic view, get your hands in the sausage, and understand the capabilities of the tools. Think about your human resource. Do you have enough people on the project? Do you have the right people on the project? Do they have the right frame of reference, frame of mind? And how do you need to support them with training and education? Have you paid enough time to modeling the data? Are you doing that rapid solution iteration? I think I'm 5 minutes in for questions. Hey. Questions? I tried to move many of my colleagues that I knew back with the tomatoes and the eggs in the back so they wouldn't have an opportunity to launch too far. Any other questions, comments? I see a half of an hour. No? Yes?
So this approach of visualization, how do you see that in a large organization with 10, 15,000 employees? Where do you draw the line? Who gets to work with this approach and who gets to work with the traditional reporting dashboarding?
Okay, first off, and I've experienced this in organizations too, if you are looking at this versus reporting, stop looking. I keep telling people, QlikView is not a reporting replacement. Tableau is not a report writer. If that's what your customers are expecting, then you need to recalibrate those expectations. Secondly, the question about how these visual technologies get into organizations has already been solved. It's about who controls the checkbook at a department level. The sales guys will tell you, well, we got it. We started this with this department here, and now, did you know they're working over here at this desk? Maybe we should both work together. And they're just selling software to the moon, right? Works fine for the sales perspective. But the choice of what really is an enterprise solution depends on what's an enterprise-wide problem. It's completely okay to have departmental solutions. And those departmental customers, you know what? They're already taking over. It's their data. And they have some tools like the best of them and ease of use. I differentiate between QlikView and Tableau like this. If you are a QlikView user, you typically, you go eat at an Outback restaurant, and they bring you a plate of food, and the food is well gathered from different places, well served, ready to go, rock and roll. But you need to have, that happens because you're people back in the kitchen putting the stuff together, and it came out pretty good. You can go from Outback up to Ruth's Chris if you like. Tableau users are at Golden Corral. I don't know what I want a little of this, I'll figure it out when I get there, but I can attach data from this, that, and the other, and it's easy enough for me to figure out, and I got a view and I'm moving on. And they're not often thinking about what they're building serving to the enterprise, they just want to get past this problem, this solution, then they're off looking at another. So they walked up with one plate, and then they finished that plate with salad, and they went over, the kids are having the dessert and the pudding and the chocolate fountain, and that's okay too, because you want to keep them away so you and your wife can talk. It depends on who your customers are. I am working in a larger enterprise at the moment where they are aiming for a strategic project, but they're starting with the plate here. They have visions of serving global things, but it'll have to prove its merits in the North American region first before they're going to, serve dinner to the world. So the choice, the answer to your question about how do you choose, divide that enterprise vision into its local components, and what is the problem? Where's the bleeding happening most? Fix that. Learn from what that was, and then figure out how to expand it. Any other questions? Yes.
Just based on your experience, how do you really help foster engagement by the personnel, in the organization that will be using the dashboard? I mean, it's a new tool, it's not what they are accustomed to, and like anything, the more you use it, the easier it is, the more you like it, but just based on your experience, like a little, feedback.
I'm learning that the best way to foster the engagement is teach people how to eat their favorite foods. If you have a 5-year-old who still doesn't want to use the fork with the macaroni and cheese, let them continue to eat mac and cheese, but work with them on how the fork helps them. Give them a spoon, and it's better than using your hands on the plate. The spoon will do the same thing, and then we'll evolve, right? I find that our customers have a rich appetite for, you give me a little of this, now that's great, show me how to do that, I'm going to go do that as well. Oh, dude, and I've had customers outpace me. You say, well, yeah, you showed me that yesterday, but I've already built and changed the one you gave me, now I want to learn how to make it do this. That's a good sign that they're catching on, and it's okay not to feel threatened by that or hurt. I'm being told if I had a tie, it would be doing that in amount of time. Thank you so much for coming. Thank you for your time.